Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield Presents Let's See What's Out There, a weekly video stream and podcast currently focused on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which season 2, which is available to watch on Paramount Plus. My name's Keith Isles and I am joined by
Pete Neely.
And we are both film and television enthusiasts. And in today's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled discussion around episode 1 of season 2, titled The Broken Circle. So you've been warned, spoilers ahead for that. If you're new here, then welcome. Nice to have you visit. If you enjoy this sort of thing, please do consider giving us a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell notification so that you'll see some of our other work. Currently at the 700 subscriber mark, and it would be really nice to get up to that 1,000 subscribers that YouTubers covet quite often. But this channel, we don't just talk about Star Trek. That's just this particular show. We talk about all sorts of film and television properties. We also look at home media releases, physical media, that sort of thing as well. So if that's your kind of jam and you like what we're doing here, as I said, please consider checking out some more of the work and subscribing to the channel. We do have a little bit of a loose agenda that we kind of stick to on this show. I'll be honest, we haven't had time to there aren't enough catchphrases in Strange New Worlds yet to change many of these. So most of them are the same as we've previously used when we've covered Picard. So we've got Hit It, which is a new phrase there, which is basically a spoiler episode summary. Then we make it so where we look at some of the production credits and people behind the scenes. Tea Earl Grey Hot is just a little bit of fun where we look at Easter eggs and connections to both Star Trek universe as well as other properties. There are Four Lights. It's just a little bit of our predicting the future and speculating where we think things might go. And then the line must be drawn here is where we really do talk about our personal thoughts and nitpicks on the episode. So that's kind of the format that we've got that we sort of stick to. But as I said, this is all a bit of fun. We have opinions, we share them. This channel is all about the love of this type of stuff, though, rather than the hate of it. So, and as I always say, although a Star Trek enthusiast, I by no means consider myself an absolute expert on everything that's canon across the Star Trek universe. But we learn as we go, right? So,
yeah,
are you ready for this then, Pete?
I would like the ship to go now.
Yes, the one upgraded title. Hit it.
We pick up from the Enterprise crew. Whoops. Dusting off here, getting back into the swing.
I was going to say, we've been off for a while. So, yeah.
We pick up with the Enterprise crew from last season. Number 1 is in jail for being genetically engineered. Singh is off working on her Gorn past, and the Enterprise is in space dock getting upgrades. Pike promptly leaves the Enterprise in Spock's hands to personally ask a lawyer to work on Number 1's case. Uhura picks up a message from Singh asking for help on a dilithium mine under joint custody of the Federation and the Klingons. But it's the Klingons month, so Admiral April says they can't go. Spock fakes a warp core breach with the help of a mysterious engineer who is working on the Enterprise upgrades, but also knows Spock's mother. They get to the mine, and Singh has uncovered what looks to be a plot to restart the Klingon War. M'Benga and Chapel try to help some sick people, but get captured by the bad guys, who have built a Federation ship. M'Benga and Chapel do some drugs and kick some butts, then reprogram the transponder to send a message. They hide in an airlock, and when the fake ship clears the planet, M'Benga's message reaches the Enterprise. Destroy this ship. Chapel and M'Benga decide to risk the vacuum of space. The Enterprise destroys the fake ship, and beams Chaplin and Benga to safety somewhat unharmed. The Klingons are upset that the Federation was at the mine, but Spock wins them over by drinking blood wine. Admiral April is mad, but Spock escapes with nothing worse than a hangover and some emotional reactions for Nurse Chapel. In Starfleet headquarters, we see April was lenient with Spock because they are tracking a Gorn attack ship on the other side of the galaxy. But we'll have to wait till next week to see what that means.
There you go. An unusual opening episode, I would say. But
yeah.
We will dig into that. But first, it's time to have a look at behind the scenes and make it so. Alrighty, so this particular episode, this first episode, was written by showrunner for this, Akiva Goldsman, who we have talked about at length on some of our other shows, but also co-written by Henry Alonso Myers. Now, Henry's credits as a writer go back to the TV series Charmed, where he was a writer producer on 20 episodes of that between 2004 and 5. He was also a producer on CSI: A Crime Scene Investigation, which obviously had loads of seasons and stuff. And he worked on a show as a supervisor and producer that I really enjoyed called Daybreak, which is a time loop episode series starring Taye Diggs, and I highly recommend it. That was about 2006, so a while ago, but it was one of those ones I really enjoyed. Has also worked as executive producer on Ugly Betty, Chuck, The Carrie Diaries, Covert Affairs, The Magicians, and now Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where he is actually listed as one of the showrunners as well as one of the writing staff. So that's interesting. But yeah, he's obviously got some credentials there as a TV producer and involved in the writing. So that is good. And this episode was directed by Chris Fisher. Now, Chris's credits for directing he's got quite a long list actually of directing credits, going right the way back to the early 2000s, where he directed Night Stalker, Rampage, the Hillside Strangler Murders, Chuck, Moonlight, Three Rivers, Cold Case, Eureka, Hawaii Five-0, Meeting Evil, Warehouse 13, Supergirl, the CW show. He directed an episode of that. Person of Interest, directing 17 episodes of that. He worked on the Marvel show Inhumans. He worked on the TV version of Taken, The Magicians, obviously with Henry Alonso Myers, who we've just mentioned. He also was the director of the Stand TV miniseries, the reimagining of that, and has been working on the TV series of The Equalizer, directing 3 episodes before moving on to Strange New Worlds. And I believe we didn't cover Strange New Worlds season 1. Because
we did a retrospective.
Yeah, we did a retrospective simply because it wasn't showing here in the UK at the time. We didn't have Paramount Plus. But he also, I believe, directed the season finale, A Quality of Mercy, which was a great episode. So again, some chops there as far as directing Star Trek and many other TV properties go. So and I can't really fault the direction of this episode. I like some of the photography and some of the way some of the camera and editing was done, but we'll get into that. I have other problems. but before we do, have you got your mug?
I have a can.
You have a can. So it's time to raise a drink and have some tea, Earl Grey, hot, or whatever's in your can.
Yeah.
Does Pike have a drink? We don't know yet, do we? We know he cooks a lot, but
He cooks a lot, but I don't remember him drinking anything specific yet.
no, no. So it's a little bit difficult to update some of these titles.
Yeah.
Plus, I haven't really had time, if I'm totally honest. Just
Don't stress it.
it's been busy, but anyway,
Yeah.
this is where we talk about Easter eggs, references, and things of that nature. References to anything really, whether it's Star Trek or other movies. And that's slightly loaded with me saying that. Pete, anything that oh, having a little coughing fit there.
Sorry.
That's all right. Anything that sort of sprung immediately to mind? It's like, oh yes, that's something we're going to see later, or a nice homage to that.
I think the only thing that I really noticed was the Klingon blood wine cups are like the standard blood wine cups, right?
Yeah.
Except for Carol Kane is drinking out of a horn, which I think they also did in Next Generation with some of the Klingon stuff, right? It was a pretty standard Klingon drink. That's the big thing I noticed. Yeah.
Okay. Nothing
Sorry,
else
it's not
today,
much.
particularly. All right, no worries. I got a few
Nothing
bits.
really stood out.
My caveat is always on this. Watch the episode once, and we record these before sort of reading up too much on stuff, just to make it fresh. But there are channels out there that specialize literally in catching every single Easter egg. So I'm not saying this is definitive ones, but I got a few here, and God, it was hard to find pictures for some of these. So, the first one, the sort of first main one, is of course the Vulcan lute, which or Vulcan harp, whatever it's officially referred to, which of course, Spock plays. We see him playing quite a bit in the original series, and this obviously taking place, some years before that. It's nice to see that crop up here. Not too sure whether that was supposed to be a gift from Mbenga or whether it was just something, he had, or whether he was returning it to Spock or what. It was a little bit unclear, but very, very cool to see it nonetheless. Yeah. So that was one. We also see, I haven't got it here, but we see the obviously the original series shuttlecraft and stuff by Starbase One. And that is one of the things I do quite like about what they've done here is, with the original series, occasionally we would see a remote starbase or something, and perhaps another Constitution class ship or whatever. But it wasn't really until the movies where we really saw how much more extensive Starfleet was or had become. And I kind of like the fact that in this we're sort of showing a glimpse at some of the rest of the bases and some of the other ships and stuff, which is always nice. So there was the Vulcan loot. I've got a picture there of Spock's mother. You actually did mention that Spock's mum gets a mention. She was obviously seen both in the original series and Star Trek Discovery. So I've got both the different actresses that played her there. I've got a picture of Uhura. I was really trying to find one of this. So one of the things that happened in this, which I think is quite nice, is in season 1, Uhura was just a cadet. In this, she is now an ensign. Obviously, she'll be a lieutenant by the time we get to the original series. So she had a promotion, but also, I don't know whether you noticed, but she was wearing the sort of green hooped earrings that Nichelle Nichols used to wear quite a lot in the original series.
I did not notice that.
No, she did not have them in season 1, but I noticed that they did that for season 2, which I thought was quite a nice reference. The other thing, I've got a picture of Carol Kane's character there, and the reason for that was one of the other things that was in the original series, and they sort of changed it by the time it came to the Star Trek movies. But there was that thing that star bases and other ships had a slightly different insignia to the Enterprise. And I didn't get a really good look at it, but it looked like she's wearing some different badges there on her uniform. So I didn't know whether that was kind of supposed to be an Easter egg or a reference, but nonetheless, I thought that was cool.
Fair point.
And then obviously we've got the starship that's stolen. Now I'm wondering whether this is to try and we say how sometimes they retroactively try and fix sort of issues or continuity problems that they've made in other shows. One of the problems with Discovery was around the whole, the Discovery itself and its sister ship, the Glenn. They were experimental, and obviously they've been redacted from history and whatever because of the spore drives and all this sort of stuff. But we always knew it was a Crossfield class starship, and the ship that they have in this was also called a Crossfield class starship. So I'm wondering if it was supposed to be, the only difference with Discovery was the fact, and the sister ship was the fact that it had the spore drive, and maybe they had sort of conventional versions as well. And you do see, you can't really see it in that picture. I couldn't find a good picture, but you see the gap in the saucer section ring very much. Discovery. So I don't know. That's a little bit of my own speculation as to whether that's them trying to do something there to sort of fix a bit of an issue. But I don't know. I might be completely off.
I like that.
A few other things. Yes, you mentioned the Klingon blood wine and the mugs that they were drinking from, the goblets were kind of very similar to what we've seen in previous Star Trek. Of course, we also get the Klingon D7 battle cruiser, which is obviously from the original series and movies. I think it was sort of introduced in Discovery in one of the episodes, but we get a really good look at it here and a great visual effect version of that ship, in its classic design. And then, of course, I don't want to get too deep into this because it just becomes annoying, but we see the Klingons, and the Klingons look more like the sort of movie stroke next gen style Klingons, which of course we did see in Enterprise as well. Obviously Discovery's Klingons looked quite different, but as we talked in sort of tedium before about this, in everything we've seen of Star Trek so far, there are multiple moons and continents and all sorts of things in the Klingon Empire. So why did they all necessarily need to look the same? I suppose one of the only issues is the time frame we're approaching is when you had human augment type Klingons, but as beautifully explained in Star Trek Enterprise, which you and I are both great fans of. But also I did notice the costuming was kind of a mixture of sort of what we saw in Discovery plus what we see or what we're familiar with in the movies and Next Gen, and a little bit of the coloring of the original series. So I think the designers made quite an effort here to kind of make some sort of visual sense, even though it's problematic. And then the other thing I put here, which I'll give a little plug to another podcast that I was involved in, the Comic Crush, by Paul Dunn. We recently rewatched all of the Indiana Jones films in anticipation of the new one that comes out next week or in a couple of weeks' time or whatever. And I have to say, the drinking scene between Leanne and the Klingons really made me think of Marion Ravenwood and the drinking scene at the Raven Bar in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we know sometimes these filmmakers homage other films that they love, and I don't know whether that was a blatant reference, but it certainly felt like it to me. Hence why I've got that. For those of you watching on YouTube, I've got the picture there of Marion from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and which you might think, what's that doing in a Star Trek Star Trek stream? But it did remind me very much of that scene, I thought.
Yeah, no, you're right. I missed that. That's a good call.
But I'm sure there's others. I mean, one of the things I did or I noticed is they did actually mention the Klingon War in this, and of course, as we know, Pike and some of the Enterprise crew actually jumped over those events by but going into the mirror universe in Discovery, season 2 and all of this sort of thing. But from what they were saying, obviously Mbenga and Chapel were introduced at the beginning of Strange New Worlds, so they had not joined the Enterprise prior to that. And they were, of course, from dialogue here, involved in the Klingon War. So I thought it was quite interesting that they brought that up. But sorry, I've been waffling a lot. Do you want to say anything, Pete?
No, you're crushing it. You're crushing it. You picked up a lot of good stuff that I should have mentioned. Yeah.
Right. Well, I just kind of was. There were a few things, but I'm sure, as I said, I'm going to go and watch the videos to find out, and I'll be going, oh yes, there was that as well. Damn it, But I do like whenever it's something visual, I really pick up on it more than I do things like planet names or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were references that way as well. But cool. Okay. Before we get into what we think, just how many lights do you think there are in this show?
There are 4 lights.
So, Pete, have you got anything? Any speculation?
Well, it does seem like they're setting up the Gorn connection. Yeah. Oh, look at you. As like the next big bad, which I have mixed feelings about. But yeah, I guess like that's the big thing that they're setting up. The next battle will be with the Gorn. And I guess that's, okay. I am definitely getting the impression that Carol Kane's character is going to be the new engineer to replace Hemka or Herka, whatever his name was, the blind Andorian.
Yes.
And
Hemmer.
Yes. And yeah, so I guess that's really all that I'm picking up. I think obviously they're going to bring Una back, right, at some point. Who knows how they're going to get that done? But they'll crowbar that in for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Una is one of the few. Well, we'll get into this, I'm sure, when we get into our nitpicks. But she is obviously one of the few characters here which we don't really know the fate of. Yeah, because we only ever saw her in The Cage, which took place before this, obviously, and we never heard of her again. So it is kind of that's the one sort of thing from this prequel show which is actually quite interesting is what might transpire there. But yeah, I really didn't have anything prediction wise. I am wondering who this lawyer that Pike's going off to meet is. I'm guessing that might be covered in the next episode, as he and Una were largely absent from this one. But I don't know whether that lawyer is going to be anyone special that we know or that we're going to know or anything like that. But it was just the way they were making a bit of a thing of it. So
they were, yeah.
That's anyone that crops up. But
Or do you think
But
they
yeah,
just made a thing of it because, like, for scheduling or whatever reason, they couldn't have Anson Mount for this episode?
hmm, maybe, I don't know. We'll get
It
to that, I'm sure. All
Yeah,
right.
it felt really weird.
Yes. Let's draw a line then for the moment.
Let's do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is yeah, this is just where we'll give our thoughts, nitpicks, etc. And Pete, I know I talk a lot and I've got a lot to say actually, but I thought I'll let you go first.
Okay. So I think start general and then get specific, right? Overall, I'm a little bit underwhelmed um, by the episode, and I think it sort of boils down to it felt a lot like uh, a Grey's Anatomy or one of those like melodrama shows where stuff just sort of happens and we're in this setting uh, that we all know and like, but really the point of the story is the emotional drama between the characters.
Hmm,
And that is not my favorite part of Star Trek. And so I think that then that might be connected to the little things that sort of strike me as like, oh, why are we doing that, right? Like, why are we focusing on the Gorn? When it feels like there's a lot of other stuff we could be focusing on, and the Gorn is something that was sort of established as starting with Kirk
yeah,
in the original series, right? Uh,
agreed.
and so I'm like, well, why are we doing that? What are we getting out of this, right? It doesn't feel like the best use of time or effort. The uh, the Klingon stuff, right? Where I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't feel as strongly about this one, but um, you know, the original series Klingons had a very specific look, and we had uh, Enterprise give us the genetic engineering as the reason for that. Um, and so it's like, oh well, I don't know why we're going away from that, or we're spending more time with um, Klingons who now look sort of different than they did in the Klingon War,
Mhm.
but they look more like Next Generation, but in timeline order. That's not the original series, so that feels weird. And then, so just to wrap it all up, and I feel like it just sort of it boils down to, oh, it's because the writers are approaching this as how do we uh, how do we tell this dramatic story that we want to tell about character interaction
Mhm.
versus how do we tell a story in this world that has X or Y purpose, right? The purpose of this story is emotional drama.
Yeah.
And so I know that, with that was like one of Roddenberry's no-nos. But then further Star Trek was like, no, we're going to lean into that. And now
Yeah.
this feels like the next iteration of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like, there's a place for a personal, emotional story to be an allegory for something in our world, which is what I'm looking for in science fiction,
Mhm.
right? Um, and instead, we're getting something else. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest. Obviously, we talked. I was really disappointed that we weren't able to do an episode by episode breakdown on Strange New Worlds season one because I
Yeah.
loved it, and as I said, it had all aired over in the US before we even got it here in the UK. So we did our I'll put a link at the end. We did our sort of retrospective on it and covered our thoughts on that. But as a season opener for something I was massively looking forward to, off the tails of Picard season 3 and all of this sort of thing. I had a lot of problems with this particular episode. There are things I love in it. There was some, design things and some character bits and pieces that I thought were fantastic. But there was a lot of stuff that we'll get into that I thought was stupid and problematic in this episode. And one of the things I'm worried that Star Trek is starting to do is it's starting to become very self-aware and almost meta. And this whole thing about you got to have a thing before you go to warp and all of that. I kind of hate that because let's be honest, Kirk didn't really have a saying. Yes, Picard had engage. But to say every captain had a thing is actually sort of inaccurate for starters.
Absolutely.
Yes, we've established that Pike says hit it in this universe and punch it in the Kelvin timeline. But so I hated that bit with I know they did it for a bit of humor, but it was almost making Spock look like a bit of a goofball. I thought that, and I really like Ethan Peck's portrayal of Spock. I think he's doing a great job and killing it and all this, but I just didn't like the way that scene had been written. I also really hated that on our season opener we don't get our main star. I really missed Anson Mount and Pike being in this episode, and yes, I know
it's so weird
to focus on the other characters, but I was just kind of a bit bothered that Pike wasn't really in the first episode of season 2. This feels like kind of a mid-season episode to me, rather than I know, yes, they're still in space dock and it's carrying on from a month or two after the end of season 1 and whatever, but I was just bothered by that, so that bothered me. Although there were nice moments in there are some lovely character moments, between Mbenga and Chapel and Spock, and I love what they're doing with Uhura. And by the way, I love the fact the episode had the dedication to Nichelle Nichols at the end. Massively respectful, and I really loved what they'd done there. So all of that stuff was good. But there were a number of things I hated. So I've already sort of said that I didn't like the catchphrase and the fact that they're actually stopping going to warp while he comes up with one, and I'm like, this is supposed to be an emergency, and what are you doing? I also hate the fact that they hijack the Enterprise. I hate it for a number of reasons. I hate it because obviously Spock does this in the menagerie coming up later, which is for Pike, and if anything, I think season 1 of Strange New Worlds made Spock's motivation in the menagerie work even better retroactively. Actually, I thought it was one of those things that really cemented that relationship and the reasons that he would do that. But the fact that that's now not the first time he hijacks the Enterprise, plus in Star Trek 3 when they hijack the Enterprise to go get Spock, Kirk is actually demoted and they're put on trial, and he's demoted because he disobeyed orders from a senior officer, right? And in this, Spock barely gets a rack on the wrist about it from Admiral April, and I'm just like, I don't know. I had a real problem with that. I was like, what the hell are they doing this for? A stealing Enterprise from space dock this early in the timeline. So I had a real problem with that. I also had a problem with this performance enhancing drug that Mbenga and Chapel take so that they can beat Klingons up. That felt like something out of an Arrowverse CW show or something. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And also, how would this be allowed in Starfleet? And apparently they used it in the Klingon War to help them beat Klingons or something. So is that supposed to tie in with Enterprise and the augment, enhancements or something. But I don't know. The whole thing there really didn't make a lot of sense. And I didn't, yes, it was nice to see them kicking ass, but it seemed just to be a plot device for them to be able to beat up, for somebody like Nurse Chapel to be able to beat up massive Klingon warriors,
Yeah.
I had a real problem with that. And then the other thing that this has driven me crazy a little bit is when you get characters like Mbenga and Chapel in danger, but we know that both of those characters survive and are in the original series, suddenly any tension that we have for those characters is completely gone. And this is where I wish they had either more original characters in this show. I understand, they're doing it for the fans and fan service and trying to expand on characters that didn't get much to do in the original series. I get that. But the thing is, if they'd either introduced new characters or taken some of the characters from the cage that served on the Enterprise, then there would be a bit more jeopardy, as we wouldn't know where they were going to end up. So there would be a risk that they could die. But when Mbenga and Chapel have to do that spacewalk and hope that they're transported in time, I didn't feel any tension because we know they're both going to be okay, right? So
Yeah.
it was a bit like you said it in season 1 about it turns out Hema did die, but when he was with Uhura and they had to do something, and you said, well, obviously there's no tension there because we know what happens to Uhura, the character. So again, this is the prequel problem, but it's also a problem with having so many characters either being younger versions of characters we see or related to characters we see. I still have a problem with the whole Noonien Singh thing because I'm like, why didn't Spock pick up on that, when they encounter Khan in Space Seed and all of this sort of thing. So that sorry, I'm waffling now, but I had a lot of problems with the episode. And also I've got to be honest, I know she's got a great resume, but I'm not sure about Carol Kane's character at all. I didn't know quite what to make of it. I was just like, alrighty then. So, but we'll see where that goes, I guess. But
I want to see where it goes. I'm not sold on it yet.
Yeah.
And I was worried at one point she was going to say, "Have fun storming the castle," right? Because it's right, like Star Trek has become that sort of like in-jokey thing where they would have her say a catchphrase from another series that she was, or not a series, right? But whatever. But she's sort of doing like the accent from Taxi almost.
Well, that's it. Like, that's what I thought was odd. I was like, what the hell is this supposed to be? Because I mean, obviously they've kind of made it that it's sort of the accent of her species because Uhura brought that up. But it's I mean, I know she's an actress who's made her career with making somewhat unusual choices, and often they've worked very well. But
she is hilarious in The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Sorry, again?
Have you seen The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix?
Yeah. Oh no,
she is absolutely hilarious.
No, I know her from more of her older work, but yeah.
She's in that. She's absolutely hilarious. But that is like a screwball comedy, right?
Right.
Where she thrives. She's great at it. Here, I think you've got an actor who is so closely tied with zaniness.
Yeah.
That then when you see her, you're always like, what's going to happen? Especially when she's doing a funny voice. You know?
Yeah, that was kind of, I was just like, oh my God. And I just thought, okay. I mean, I'm trying to be open-minded about it and be okay. At least it's a new character. I'll give it that. At least it's not, I'll be honest. There was talk at one point as to whether we'd get Scotty in this. And I really didn't want that because that's too soon. Personally, I still wanted Hemner to be in it because I like the
Yeah.
Anar, Andorian Anar race,
Love the Anar. Yeah.
which was brought in, of course, in Enterprise, which I love, a great tie in there. But also the fact that that was being inclusive, not just from the character point of view, but from the actor point of view as well. And I was just quite surprised. I really liked the chemistry he had with Uhura and many of the
He
crew,
was
and I was just
great.
really, I mean, it was a great shocker at the end of season 1. And by the way, hopefully anyone watching this realizes that if we're spoiling the first episode of this, we're going to go back and spoil season 1. So apologies if anyone's like, what the hell, we haven't seen that yet. Why would you be watching this? Sorry.
Why would you watch season 2 if you haven't watched season 1?
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit worried about some of the self-awareness that's happening by this, and obviously, it suffers, as many things do, from prequels. But I look at Enterprise, and which was, of course, a prequel and had its problems on some episodes, but that season 4 of Enterprise was fan service done correctly, which completely served up everything which was to come. And as I said, I try and think of this show as being a sequel to that rather than a prequel to everything else. But we also know it is a prequel to everything else. So, yes.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too off topic, but yeah, Enterprise season 3, I think, ties back to what I was saying before about using science fiction to tell a story, right, that has connection to, life today, but also is very character driven, right? There
Yes.
was a lot of character choices in it. It wasn't though well, yeah, now I'm like waffling a little bit, but the best parts of season 3 were when they didn't just get lost in the characters, but actually use the characters to tell the story.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And of course, obviously,
Yeah.
yes, it was a 9/11 allegory as well, but
Yeah.
they
It was
made
about forgiveness on a national, societal level. And
yes, but
yeah.
they made it a really interesting science fiction story, and they actually created a race of characters that we didn't already know, even though it was a
Yeah.
prequel, which again, some could say continuity wise is problematic, but I almost prefer it because
No, I think it's great. Yeah. Multiple races.
the Gorn thing is, like you mentioned earlier on, is potentially an issue as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
They doing it just because we think lizards are cool. Like there's so many other things they could be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm being very hard on it here, and I've only watched it the once, and there were a lot of things that I liked. As you know, I picked up on a lot of what I thought were really cool Easter eggs. In fact, I'm not entirely sure, but I think some of them were trying to fix some things as well. Because as I've always said, that this is a great sequel to Enterprise and the Cage, but it's also a sequel to Discovery, and Discovery is the thing that's made everything problematic in terms of continuity and character and aesthetic and all of that stuff. But yeah, we'll see where they go. It's only the first episode, and I'm super glad it's back. I mean, as soon as the theme music played, and they've updated the beginning titles a little bit as well, and I loved all of that, and I really like the the look and everything that they had for this episode. I just the Spock stealing the Enterprise really bothered me, and the blood. Or not the blood, but the enhancing drug thing to make everyone
The
kick
drugs,
ass.
yeah.
That kind of reeked of the super blood from Star Trek Into Darkness, for me, which, as you know, I'm not a fan of at all. So
I did almost put a triple blood joke into the recap that I had, but I opted against it. I thought it was too weak. But yeah, I think you and I are in 100% agreement. I think if we want to sum it up, we say like they made some weird choices
They did.
to
Yeah.
start the season with this. They made some weird choices, but we just have to see before we can, make a all over decision, right? Like,
We do.
yeah,
there's things I'm worried about that are coming as well. The inclusion of James Kirk as a more featured character in this bothers me. I know it's coming. That really bothers me. The way they handled it in season one kind of worked, but I'm a little bit worried about introducing too much of that now. And also, of course, I don't even know how they're going to do it, but the lower decks crossover, which I'm sure will be quite amusing and clever or whatever, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure my head canon is ready to accept those characters just yet. But if you want to know my thoughts on that and you're watching this, please go back and listen to some previous episodes where I come out with my own headcanon theory about it all. But yeah, that's quite nerdy. But then that's what this show is.
perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to add, Pete, about any of this? The production, the episode, the characters going.
We talked about this yet, but there were a lot of weird shots in this episode, right? Like there was a lot of like 360 camera movements,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I didn't mind that actually.
Oh, really? Some of them, I was like, what is going on? Why?
Okay.
Like, there was a couple of them when they were tied to like how, I can't remember the navigator character's name. McNavia is the actor, I think.
Navia.
Yeah.
Hold on. The because I haven't got them. Ortegas.
I haven't got him.
Lieutenant
Yeah.
Or Mitchell.
At one point,
there's Ortegas and Mitchell, which is helms person and navigator. Which, by the way, one thing I will say, and I had a problem with this in season one as well. Okay, this really it's
Ortegas.
But the fact that they're both wearing red when they should be wearing gold really annoys me, right? Helm and navigation in this time period is gold because red is security, engineering, and operations. So yes, Uhura's wearing red. That's right. But the helmsperson and the navigator should be wearing gold, and it just drives me mad that they put them in red. I don't get that. That's another continuity thing that doesn't make any sense to me. Even though I love the uniforms in this show, but it just seems like they made some odd choice there that doesn't seem right. But anyway, that's nitpicky, I know.
No, that's perfect. Ortegas is who I'm talking about, though.
Yes.
At one point, Ortegas did a motion on the ship, and then the camera sort of started to go 360, and then we cut to the exterior, and you see the ship going 360, right? And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I didn't mind that so much. But when it was in the false flag Enterprise ship, and at one point, just like the camera goes 360, and then Mbega and Chapel start kicking butt, but then like they're kind of on the roof, but then no, it's okay. They're right side up, and it just that one felt weird to me.
Yeah,
and it
was a bit showy. I mean, one of the things I did like was when they showed somebody being transported, but from the point of view of being transported. I did like that. That was different. I don't think we've seen
that. Was different.
Don't think
that was Mbenga and Chapel 2 being transported from the vacuum of space, and they were like spinning in space, and then in the transport you see them, and I was like, oh, that's actually, I didn't mind that so much.
It reminded me like of the Stargate movie when we first see James Spader's character actually go through the Stargate, and you see sort of his experience of it. It always made me think of that a little bit. But okay, well, if you've got nothing to add, we just need to look at our Rank stripe
Ooh.
rating system for this one, because we're into stripes now, not pins. I'm sorry I couldn't find it in the. I just I had to put this together quick, so I just googled this, but I couldn't find it the other way up like we had with the pips. So
No, I'm impressed that you got it with the right uniform style. So
there we
well
go.
done.
There we go.
Well done.
But yeah, so where would you rank this episode?
I think that I would rank this as a lieutenant.
Yep. I'm
Um,
exactly the same as you. I was going to say a lieutenant because I didn't
yeah.
totally hate it. There was a lot
No,
of
there's
good
some
stuff
interesting
in
stuff.
there,
Yeah.
but
And
overall,
I want to give Star Trek credit for when it makes interesting decisions, right? Like
mhm,
when a show is going to make interesting decisions, whether they be good or bad, right? Um, I think we need to acknowledge that, and that, in today's environment, it can be hard to get anything made. And so trying to do something different deserves credit. So I'm giving this a little bit of credit for doing something different at different times.
mhm,
I'm not sure that it worked all of the times that they did it. But I also think, we should let, it's only episode one
yes.
of, is it 12 or 10 or I don't know.
That's a good question, actually. This season, have I got anything that says? I think it's 10, like season one.
Yeah,
I think
10 would be my guess. Uh, but so there's still a lot to go. Um, but what I don't understand not having Anson Mount in this. Um,
or just
I don't
briefly,
understand a lot.
just briefly.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
he's not in this episode.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm hoping next week's episode is going to kind of show while all this was going on, what was actually happening with Pike and Una. I'm hoping,
yeah.
but also that the way Leon came back into the frame was I thought a little bit odd as well after a kind of leaving to go and help that family, and then it's like, oh, yeah, the family are fine, and here's an injection which will happen off screen. She'll be fine, kind of thing. That was a bit weird,
I
but
didn't mind it. I did not mind it. I'm sorry. I will say, I think it was good that they it was good. I was worried she was going to be gone forever, right? And I liked that character a little bit.
yes,
Um, and I think that they lost too many characters from season one already.
yeah,
Um, and so having her come back, I think was good. I hope by episode three she's back on the bridge full time. Yeah,
yes, as security chief, which I'm assuming
yeah.
at the end of this that was kind of what was expected. But yeah, yeah,
They didn't. They asked her what was next, and then the shot was like her face, like, "Oh, I don't know," and then
yeah,
that was it.
yeah.
So we'll see.
Cool.
It was
All right,
ambiguous.
right. Well, let's open a channel.
Okay, so if you're listening to this as a podcast, thank you very much. You can email us at lswotcast@gmail.com. You can follow the podcast on all good social media apps at LSWOTcast. I've been Pete Mealy. You can find me. We got to change this. I'm not really on Twitter anymore. Uh, let's say on Instagram at PMCMELE. Keith, where can people find more of you and your work?
Okay, well, obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're already on the channel Home Media Minefield. So you can follow us at Home Media Minefield. If you want to see more of my creative work, though, I do have another YouTube channel called British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name. And you can see some short films that I made on that channel. We also, as I've mentioned before, we've covered previous seasons of Star Trek Picard on this show, as well as Star Wars shows like The Mandalorian and Andor, and also some of the Marvel shows as well. So there's other things, not to mention other movie properties, both past and present. Also, I do cover home media releases, and I have gone into some details on some of the Star Trek Blu-ray and 4K releases, including Strange New Worlds Season 1. So, yeah, please check that out on the channel. I also do want to give a shout out to Neil Myers, who does the theme music for this show. You can find Neil's work at neilmyersmusic.com. So, Pete, there we go. Week 1 out of the way. Looking forward to next week.
I am looking forward to next week. I have said it before, I'll say it again. Any day where there's a new Star Trek episode that we get to watch is a good day.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. And we'll try and get these episodes out as quickly as possible, following them first dropping, before all other spoilers and reviews and everything get out there. But listen, thank you for watching. If you're there, thank you, Pete, for joining me as always. And we will see you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now.